Real stories, real people.
Sudiksha Konanki traveled to Punta Cana with a group of friends to celebrate spring break. She was 20 years old, a student at the University of Pittsburgh, and dreamed of a future in biomedical technology. The Rio Republica resort seemed like the perfect getaway music, a private beach, and non-stop activities for young travelers. Everything felt carefree until the early hours of March 6th. After a night of dancing, the group headed down to the beach. The resort's security cameras recorded every step, and, chillingly, those images would become the last time Sudiksha was ever seen alive. The footage shows Sudiksha walking toward the beach with a young man who was also staying at the resort. Her friends returned to their room earlier, assuming she'd follow shortly after, but she never did. At 4:15 a.m., she appears on camera for the final time, barefoot, smiling, and moving toward the shoreline under the dim glow of the resort lights. The waves were restless that night, the kind of unpredictable surf that can change direction in seconds, yet nothing in her body language suggested fear. After that moment, the camera loses her completely. Hours later, as the sun rose, her friends realized she hadn't come back. They reported her disappearance to the front desk, and resort staff began reviewing security footage. When they couldn't locate her anywhere on the property, the Dominican authorities launched a full search operation, helicopters scanning the coastline, boats combing the water, rescue teams pacing every inch of the beach. But the ocean kept its secrets. There were no signs of a struggle, no cries for help reported, and no items washed ashore. It was as if Sudiksha had simply dissolved into the dark water. Investigators questioned the young man who walked with her. He claimed they reached the beach together, but got separated in a matter of seconds. His story wasn't enough to build a timeline. The beach at dawn felt hauntingly calm, no footprints leading into the water, no belongings left behind, no witnesses who heard or saw anything unusual. The absence of evidence only deepened the mystery. How could someone vanish on a well-lit resort beach without being noticed? Sudiksha was known for being cautious. Her family insisted she would never enter the ocean alone at night. Throughout the day, authorities restricted access to the shoreline and scanned nearby currents known for their dangerous undertows. Red warning flags were raised, and parts of the beach were taped off. But even the roughest waters usually returned something: clothing, debris, footprints, anything. This time, nothing. The lack of clues fueled rumors among tourists and locals. Some believed she drowned. Others suspected foul play. But without a body, every theory remained suspended in uncertainty. The ocean looked peaceful, but everyone sensed it was hiding a truth no one could reach. Sudiksha's family flew to the Dominican Republic immediately. They walked the same beach where she disappeared, speaking with hotel staff, guests, and anyone who might have seen or heard something. They stood outside the resort watching search teams sweep the area again and again. The pain of not knowing weighed heavily on them. Her father described her as responsible, focused, and careful someone who wouldn't put herself in danger. The hardest part wasn't imagining what might have happened. It was imagining that she could have been scared, alone, with no one there to help. As days passed, the search expanded miles beyond the resort. Boats patrolled offshore waters while divers explored deeper areas of the coastline. Search and rescue experts explained that under certain conditions, bodies can drift far from where they disappeared. But even then, it was unusual for the ocean to keep someone hidden this long. Tourists continued to enjoy the resort, unaware that just beyond the sunbeds and umbrellas, a massive investigation was unfolding. The beach where she vanished remained open, but locals said the atmosphere felt different, heavier, quieter. Investigators replayed the final footage countless times. Each replay yielded the same details: Sudiksha, smiling, walking toward the beach, vanishing beyond the camera's angle. They checked external cameras, access points, even nearby boat logs, hoping to catch a glimpse of movement after 4:15 a.m. But the timeline froze there. No one else reported seeing her. No further images existed. For her family, that still frame became a haunting symbol not of what happened, but of everything they would never get answers for. That small moment became the edge of an impossible cliff. As days turned into weeks, the case drew media attention from the U.S. and the Caribbean. Her family spoke publicly, urging authorities to continue the search. They pushed for international support, pressed for clarity, and requested legal recognition of her presumed death, not because they had given up, but because they needed a way to move forward in a system that demands paperwork more than pain. The questions surrounding her disappearance only grew louder, but no new evidence surfaced. It became one of those cases where truth feels just out of reach. Today, the beach at Rio Republica still looks like any other tropical paradise. Clear water, soft waves, lights shimmering along the shoreline at night. But for those who know her story, the place feels different. Locals say that on quiet nights, the wind carries a faint whisper down the shore, as if the ocean itself remembers what happened. Sudiksha's story lingers there, suspended between fact and silence, and it reminds us that even the most beautiful places can hold shadows, and that sometimes the deepest mysteries hide beneath the calmest waters. "28-year-old Lars Joachim Mittank was a German citizen from Itzehoe, near Hamburg. He worked as a precision mechanic, loved soccer, especially Werder Bremen, and spent weekends fishing with his father. He wasn't reckless, troubled, or impulsive. He was grounded, responsible, loved by his parents. To everyone who knew him, Lars was the last person who would ever disappear without a trace. But in the summer of 2014, during a simple vacation with friends in Bulgaria, something inside him, or around him, began to unravel, leading to one of Europe's most haunting unsolved mysteries. On June 30th, 2014, Lars flew with 5 friends to Golden Sands, Bulgaria, a cheap, loud, beach party destination on the Black Sea. The kind of place where young Europeans go to drink, dance, and escape their routine. The first days were normal. Photos show Lars smiling, partying, relaxing by the pool. But his friends noticed something odd. He barely ate, just soups or salads. Small details often mean nothing, until they mean everything. On July 5th, the group watched a World Cup match at a bar. Lars, joking around, swapped table flags after a few beers. A group of Bayern Munich fans confronted him. Lars wore a Werder Bremen jersey. There were tense words, but no real fight. The moment ended quickly. Everyone dismissed it, but later, this harmless interaction would become the seed of something dark in Lars's mind, a fear that would soon consume him. At 4 a.m., 2 friends stopped at McDonald's. Lars didn't want food and said he'd walk back to the hotel alone. He didn't return with them. When he finally arrived, hours later, he avoided conversation and went straight to his room. The next morning, he told his friends he'd been attacked by 2 men hired, he believed, by the Bayern fans from the bar. No one witnessed anything. No one heard a fight. But Lars held his left ear in pain, and his behavior had changed. On July 7th, the day they were supposed to fly home, Lars's ear pain worsened. A doctor confirmed a perforated eardrum flying was too dangerous. His friends offered to stay, but Lars insisted they go. He promised he'd return to Germany shortly with help from his insurance company. So at 8 p.m., they left Bulgaria. Lars stayed behind, alone, anxious, and increasingly paranoid. After leaving the hospital, Lars took a taxi that eerily seemed to be waiting for him. He bought antibiotics at 2 pharmacies, withdrew money, and asked for a cheap hotel for the night. The driver took him to Hotel Color, an aging building in a rough, poorly lit area near Varna. From the moment he walked in, the receptionist noticed he looked tense, flushed, unsettled. Lars asked about bus routes to Germany and kept glancing over his shoulder. Something was chasing him, whether real or imagined. That night, Lars called his mother in a state of rising panic. He whispered that the hotel felt unsafe. He said the receptionist had done something to his credit card and begged his mother to block it. Then he said something that chilled her. "I think someone wants to rob me or kill me." Sandra booked him a flight for the next afternoon and a backup bus ticket. But Lars whispered again, "They won't let me take the plane. They won't let me take the bus." His paranoia was spiraling. Around 1 a.m., Lars left the hotel with all his belongings. At 2:30 a.m., he called his mother again, whispering, terrified, "There are 4 men following me. I'm hiding. I'm up high. I could fall." Then he hung up. Minutes later, he sent 2 texts asking, "What is Cefsil 500? It was the antibiotic he'd bought earlier, but now he doubted even that. His mother waited for another call. It never came. Around 5 a.m., a taxi driver saw Lars near the beach, dirty, shaking, pupils completely dilated. He looked like he had been running for hours. The driver took him to the airport despite already having a passenger. At 6 a.m., Lars called his mother one last time. He said he'd made it to the airport, but insisted they still wouldn't let him fly. He sounded exhausted, but terrified. Sandra told him to wash up and see the airport doctor. She didn't know it would be their final conversation. The airport doctor examined Lars for 42 minutes. His behavior was anxious, restless, sleep-deprived. The doctor said he could fly if he signed a liability waiver. Lars did. But as the doctor described, everything changed when a 3rd man entered the room someone investigators have never properly identified. The moment he stepped inside, Lars reacted with pure instinct. He bolted. He ran out of the room, leaving behind his backpack, phone, passport, wallet, everything. Survival was the only thing on his mind. At 10:08 a.m., airport CCTV captured Lars running through the terminal. He slowed briefly, looked around, and then sprinted again toward the perimeter. He climbed a barbed wire fence with shocking speed. On the other side was a field of towering sunflowers. Lars disappeared into them. He was never seen again. Not a body, not a clue, nothing but the echo of his footsteps. Police dogs followed his scent to the nearby A2 highway. Drivers reported seeing a young German man walking along the road that same morning. Years later, unconfirmed sightings surfaced: a sex worker in Bulgaria, a truck driver in Germany, a homeless man in Italy. But none were proven. His mother believes he wasn't hallucinating, that he was running from something real. Others believe he suffered a sudden psychotic break. Some suspect foul play. No theory fully explains what happened, and every trail leads to silence. Almost a decade later, the case of Lars Mittank still haunts the internet. His mother continues searching. Private investigators still receive tips. And the footage of Lars sprinting in terror across an airport has been watched millions of times. A man with a quiet life. A man with every reason to go home. And a man who, within hours, descended into a fear so consuming it drove him to run into an open field and never return. Whatever chased him that morning, real or imagined, only Lars knew, and that truth disappeared with him. In the spring of 2014, two Dutch friends, Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, both in their early 20s, traveled to Panama for what was supposed to be a life-changing adventure. They planned to explore the country, learn Spanish, and volunteer with local children. Their families described them as responsible, optimistic, and deeply excited about the experience ahead. After 2 weeks of traveling, they settled in the mountain town of Boquete, surrounded by dense rainforest and cloud-covered peaks. They didn't know that their dream trip was about to turn into one of the most unsettling mysteries of the decade, one that still lingers in the air around those mountains. On the 1st of April 2014, Chris and Lisanne left their host family's home around late morning to hike the well-known trail El Pianista. It was considered scenic, popular, and relatively safe. They took a taxi to the trail's entrance and began their hike under clear skies. Their phones later showed they climbed the trail successfully and reached the lookout point at the Continental Divide. They took cheerful photos along the way, smiling, relaxed, enjoying the view. But shortly after the last normal photos were taken, something changed in their path. Their next steps would lead them into a place where no one would see them alive again. Instead of returning the same way, the girls appear to have unknowingly continued beyond the safe tourist path, crossing into a more dangerous section that leads deep into Panama's rainforest. This area is dense, confusing, and easy to get lost in, even for experienced hikers. Evidence from their photos suggests they moved downhill into unfamiliar terrain, possibly following a water source or searching for a waterfall they had previously Googled. Their smiles fade in the final daylight pictures. In one image, Chris stands on a rock crossing a stream, her expression tense, almost uneasy. It's the last photo that seems normal before everything shifts into darkness. That same afternoon, around 4:39 p.m., the first attempt to call emergency services was made from Chris's phone, an international 112 call. Minutes later, Lisanne's phone also attempted a 911 call. Both attempts failed due to the lack of signal deep in the jungle. These calls confirmed the girls were already in distress, only hours after beginning their hike. For days, both phones were turned on and off, suggesting rising desperation, dwindling battery, and perhaps one girl still alive, while the other could no longer help. Each failed call is like an echo from the forest, an unanswered plea swallowed by the trees. For the next 10 days, the phones showed a haunting pattern. Lisanne's phone died on April 4. Chris's iPhone continued to power on intermittently until April 11, but the PIN code was never entered again, suggesting Chris may have been unable to unlock it, or someone else was attempting to. By then, the girls were alone, injured, or in a deteriorating state. The phone logs paint a silent timeline of survival attempts, fear, and exhaustion. The jungle around Boquete is unforgiving steep cliffs, rapid rivers, and thick vegetation where a single wrong step can become a fatal mistake. On April 8th, something terrifying happened. Between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., the camera took 90 photos in complete darkness, using flash. The images are confusing. Rocks, branches, dense black surroundings. One photo seems to show a makeshift signal or marker made of candy wrappers on a stone. Another appears to show a strap or mirror placed deliberately. One chilling image seems to capture the back of Chris's head. These photos have fueled endless theories, attempts to signal rescue, document injuries, or keep predators away. Whatever happened that night, fear was undeniably present, fear illuminated only by a camera flash. When Chris and Lisanne failed to show up for a scheduled appointment on April 2, concern rose quickly. By April 6, both families arrived from the Netherlands, accompanied by Dutch police, search and rescue teams, and search dogs. For 10 days, helicopters scanned the area, volunteers combed through ravines, and posters filled the town. The jungle, however, is nearly impenetrable, with thick canopy that hides everything beneath it. Despite the massive effort, no trace of the girls was found. The rainforest seemed to have swallowed them whole, leaving behind only silence and unanswered questions that weighed heavily on everyone involved. 10 weeks later, in June, an indigenous woman found a blue backpack near a riverbank in Alto Romero, far from the hiking trail. Inside were the girls' passports, phones, sunglasses, money, bras, and Lisanne's camera. Everything was dry and neatly packed, contradicting the harsh environment around it. Investigators reconstructed the phone timelines and examined the camera's images. The discovery confirmed the girls had traveled far into the wilderness. But the condition of the backpack raised unsettling questions. How did it end up miles away, intact, with no signs of damage? The forest returned their belongings before it returned their bodies. Soon after the backpack's discovery, searchers found denim shorts belonging to Chris on a rock near the river. Later, they found a boot containing a foot, along with scattered bones eventually identified as belonging to both women. Some bones appeared bleached, others still had small traces of skin. There were no knife marks, animal marks, or signs of struggle. The remains were found in different locations, adding another layer of mystery to their final days. The forest had taken them apart piece by piece, returning fragments as if offering clues, but never the full story of what truly happened. Authorities initially suggested that Chris and Lisanne fell into a ravine and succumbed to injuries, later carried by the river. But inconsistencies in the case sparked debates for years. Why were the phones handled so carefully after the supposed fall? Why were some remains bleached while others weren't? Why were the bones found so far apart? And who took the night photos? In 2017, new investigative voices suggested possible involvement of locals. They met the night before the hike, but nothing was ever proven. The truth remained elusive, drifting between accident and something far darker. Boquete, despite its beauty, has witnessed multiple unexplained disappearances. Before Chris and Lisanne, a British man vanished in 2009. 1 month after the Dutch girls disappeared, an American woman also went missing. Other individuals connected to the case died under strange circumstances. These patterns deepened public suspicion, pushing the story beyond a simple hiking accident. Panama's own investigators were heavily criticized for inconsistencies. Dutch forensic experts questioned the handling of evidence. Each new development only added smoke, never clarity, turning the case into a haunting regional legend whispered among hikers and locals alike. More than a decade later, the disappearance of Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon remains one of the most unsettling travel mysteries in modern history. Their diaries, photos, and recovered belongings tell a fragmented story, two young women lost in a place that offers no mercy and no answers. Online communities continue to investigate, documentaries revisit the case, and podcasts uncover new claims. Yet no official cause of death has ever been confirmed. The rainforest still holds its secrets tightly, and the fate of Chris and Lisanne lingers like a shadow over the trail of El Pianista, a reminder that some places never tell the whole story.